it needs to be on the schedule for us to come with suggestions and courses of action. So you're not opposed to scheduling that? Okay, great. Well, there you go. Got the ball rolling. The next speaker is Philip Pierce.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for hearing me here this evening. I've got a list of a few things here I'd like to speak with. I don't know how much time I'm allotted to.
It's basically, I think the most is like 15 minutes.
All right, I don't think I'll be that long, but it might be over 5 minutes anyway. All right, thank you. Just think around there a little bit. I'm here to speak on behalf of Mill Lane and the residents of that area. Some things I'd like to get started with is I'd like to inform this gathering of how I find things interesting. And I'll start off with number one. I find it interesting that Mill Lane was closed to through traffic in 1990 and no action for repairs were started at that time. I find it interesting that in 1994, Hurricane Floyd breached the dam. To my knowledge, no federal funding was sought as a result of that washout. Number three, I find it interesting that not until Mr. Nelson Bollinger became the first district commissioner, nothing was done to get the roadway repaired. Mr. Bollinger assured us that the funding was made available for that repair at that time. Number four, I find it interesting when Cecil County went to 5 commissioners and Commissioner Bollinger became the 2nd district commissioner, and when he left, so did the repair of Mill Lane. I find it interesting, while trying to get Mill Lane repaired, former 1st District Commissioner, County Commissioner Bill Mallet, who along with his family lived there, advised me that he preferred that it remained closed. I find it interesting that former Commissioner, now County Council President, who happens to own property adjacent to the proposed replacement of a bridge in Elk Neck, which was to have only bridge replacement, is now a full-blown $400,000 project, including roadway work, including straightening out the turns. I find it interesting that Cecil County government, after years of not showing an interest in the Mill Lane project, through their negligence at the central landfill, are so eager to throw Mill Lane under the bus in order to get the $35,000 fine reduced to $15,000, while costing the county $140,000 to stabilize Mill Lane. I find it interesting that we can build county complexes and jails, grow government by creating jobs and fighting lawsuits, but I cannot understand why we fail to repair the bridges and the roadways of the 1st District. Thank you.
Mr. Pierce, what other roads and bridges are we ignoring other than Mill Lane? You implied that there's multiple roads and bridges that are not being repaired, or is it all focused on Mill Lane?
Well, first of all, let me tell you this. You went down to Stimmer's Run and you replaced that pipe down there at the tune of $444,000, which was a good job, and we appreciate that, the folks in that area, and that was good. Probably that pipe was put in back right after the Depression. So, that being said, then you resurfaced, or prior to that, you resurfaced the Pine Woods Road, which is a very, very secondary road, and it had really a few potholes in it, and they took the funds and used that to do the whole roadway. And most of the people that tell you that live on that road that was ridiculous. The whole time prior to that, we were trying to get Mill Lane repaired before you spent that money there. And yes, we did have to fight you to get the road repaired on Bohemia Church Road, we had to get large groups of people, and this was before your tenure, Mr. President Hodge, up at the Bunker Hill Road area. I think they put a new box culvert in there, and the trucks ran over it and collapsed it. Mumford and Miller put that in, and it collapsed, and no action was taken on that until the citizens took it upon themselves to come to the county and fight to get that repaired, of which they did. And then I believe, if I'm not sure, contractor in Dover finished that project. And now we have on Sandy Bottom Road a pipe that is collapsing there and causing a very hard bump. But that in no way is in the same league with the Mill Lane project. The one thing about Mill Lane I'd like to point out is when this first started out, we talked about the figures they threw around in the 90s was like $150,000 to replace that bridge down there. Somewhere along the way, those figures have grown to over, I'm hearing over $5 million. I just find that just totally unacceptable. I don't think that it would cost that kind of money. I know they're basing some of the cost on engineering that was done by a Baltimore firm earlier on that proposed putting one of two different dams there, a kayak ramp, a picnic area, and the tune of that was like $3.2 million at the time. And that was when they, after that they brought on board, the county brought on board the Spectron lawsuit folks. And they were going to come up with funds to help do the stabilizing, and they had to be assured some assurances from the county before they would proceed. And apparently the county never really took any action, so the money that the federal government was going to provide for that stabilization there seemed to slip away as well. So basically, I guess what I'm perturbed about is, in the interest of the folks of Cecil County, incompetence appears to be rampant in county government over the years, and if some of these things had been done in the private sector, some of the folks that work here and serve here would be looking for other jobs. Thank you.
Mr. Pierce, I can understand your outrage. The other bridge that I felt was being ignored was Rolling Mill Bridge, and that was in a priority funding area. And I hope it's on the CIP list. I'm not sure if that was undone. It wasn't 400,000 near Mr. Hodges' house, it was 4 million. And from what I've been told, yeah, 4 million.
4 million, I'm sorry.
And that money has been put back, and so it's the full-blown project, from what I hear, is being going to be put in. I think there needs to be some sort of consistency, and I can understand your frustration. You're a taxpayer, just like every one of us, and we should use a consistent standard in how policy and how we are going about replacing, upgrading, and keeping these roads open. I'm happy that you brought up the issue about the plants. That's what I had remembered as well. The $3.5 million that Mr. Flanagan, Director Flanagan, kept referring to, I saw the picture of what was being proposed, and there was never an estimate, cost estimate for a road being cut down, just leveled without all the extras. And I think it's very doable, but I don't think the political will at this point is going to make it happen.
Well, what I'm trying to point out here this evening is that it's time in Cecil County that we quit playing politics. If you want to get big-time government with the council, county council, and county executive, then let's start acting like that kind of government, and let's start making the decisions that are best for the citizens and stop playing the small-town petty politics. Thank you.
Thank you. The next name is John McDaniel.
Good evening. I'm prepared to speak, but in opening, I'd like to share, I'm not familiar with the area that Mr. Chris is talking about, but I I do share some of the frustrations that as a voter and as a private citizen that he's sharing on some of the incompetence that's going on in our county government. So with that, I'll start my prepared speech, and then in closing, I am going to speak off the cuff of a meeting I attended last night, dealing with artesian water up in Cherry Hill area. So there's a huge mistrust in our county government. Charter has been in effect in a little over a month and a half. The greatest fear of many had in changing the charter was that there was too much power given to one person. Ms. Moore assured us there was checks and balances with charter government. It appears our worst fears have become a reality. During the first month, we have had a lawsuit brought against our county executive for changing our party affiliation for the purpose to appoint the individual to fill or vacate the seat on the council. Also included in the suit is the allegation the county executive made a unilateral decision to submit a new tier map 10 without legislative approval to the Maryland Department of Planning. It should be noted that a member of the county council owns properties located in the growth area of map 10. I have since received an email notification from the county concerning a public hearing on February the 19th on tier map issues. Included in that email is an attachment letter dated December 27, 2012, sent to the Honorable Terry Moore from Richard Joseph, Director of Planning Services of the Maryland Department of Planning. Stated in that letter, and I will read it. On review of the adopted tier map MDP, finds that it does not conform to the intent of the criteria established in the Act. The county's adopted tier map will allow a significant number of major subdivisions with septic systems or forester agricultural lands resulting in adverse impacts to local streams and the Chesapeake Bay. Just this morning, I read that Ms. Moorfield's MDP report was unwarranted. The fact still remains that Ms. Moore submitted the map without county approval, council approval. I have several questions. Did Ms. Moore sit down with the council and try to resolve these differences? And who is the 1,000 Friends of Maryland? I don't believe anyone voted for charter with the expectation of one person making a unilateral decision on an issue as important as their property rights or property value. At least that is not what we were told how charter would work. Last evening, I do live in Cherry Hill, and I received a letter in the mail sent to all residents in Cherry Hill. It said they now have availability for water. I'm going to that meeting last night up at the Cherry Hill Middle School. I come to find out that my property fronts 213. The main does not run in front of my property. There is no availability of water in there. 50 homes across the road in Academy Hills. There's no availability of water to them. There are 2 apartment complexes, Cherry Woods Apartments, and one I call Montgomery Apartments, which comes down off of Elk Mills Road. No availability to them. The small strip mall up there, Cherry Hill Plaza, is not included in those plans. So only a small, I granted that the main priority was to get water up to WL Board into the 2 schools. I have no objection to that, nor do I think anyone else does. But to tell us that the residents that live in that area would have availability of water was definitely not a truthful statement, because I probably only a quarter of the people who live in Cherry Hill would be able to tie into that man. With all that being said, there has been a suggestion that the council should have a county auditor. Charter has gotten off to a rough start, and I think having an auditor to ensure there are no improprieties is a smart idea. Otherwise, there would be many more lawsuits. I would like to know what each of your positions is about hiring a county auditor. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. I am actually in support of an in-house auditor. It became very apparent to me that losing our treasurer was losing a good resource of information for me. I was able to speak with Crystal Moore in Harper County, and Harper County had the ability to put in the in-house auditor many years ago. but they have just recently done so because of the, I guess, the increase in contentiousness between the two branches of government. And they found her services to be invaluable with the research she does in providing the fiscal notes. But she's finding that she doesn't have enough hours in the day to get everything done that they'd like her to do. There's multiple jobs that they give her in researching issues, in doing assessments on, what do you call that? I forget what it's called, but you assess, you try to address something before you lose a lot of money, and I forget what that's called. I think that it would be a really good investment for the council. We don't have the same access to the directors that we once had before. And to be able to research the laws that are, the bills that are being presented before us, we have to have good information, and there's just not enough hours in the day. In addition to, studying this book here, getting ready for my work sessions and legislative meetings, I think I have 9 commissions I sit on, and I'm very active with the drug awareness issue. There's a number of things I haven't been able to follow through on. I'd like to really promote as you know, the recruitment and retainment of the volunteer fire departments, to be able to research all of this information. There just isn't enough hours in the day. You really need a good support staff. So that's my personal opinion.
Well, my opinion is, I ran to basically reduce the size of the government and contain expenses. At this particular point in time, I have absolutely no desire to hire an independent auditor for the council. I think that we have adequate opportunities to participate in the base decision-making process, and furthermore, we have the opportunity to basically not pass certain provisions of the budget. I think we have adequate controls now. Now, should the condition arise of which we need more authority, we could appoint or basically hire at our discretion an independent auditor to look at specific issues. And that's how I'd approach this issue.
You had a whole list of questions I wrote down too, and one of them was your concern that you received a letter from Artesian about the availability of water. And I don't want to speak for Artesian, but I'll defer to Joe DeNunzio, who I think is hiding in the back. But I'm going to suggest to you that there was a water line that ran to Cherry Hill and serves some of the customers in the Cherry Hill area. Just because the water pipe is not directly in front of your property or adjacent to your property does not mean it's not available. If you believe that you need water, and I believe it's totally voluntary, no one is asking anyone to connect to that water pipe, no one. But if you decide that you would prefer to have public water through Artesian, I'm sure that if you contacted them and said, what can be done to get me connected, they will try to figure out a way to get you connected, and you do not need to have to be next to or joining the pipe.
Mr. Hodge, I did ask that question.
You asked who?
The representatives were up at Cherry Hill Middle School last evening.
Okay.
To answer any questions that any of the residents in that area had. Okay? And basically, all Artesian did was utilize the old Seco utility system water lines.
That's not true.
That is true.
They put in 6 miles of new pipe.
Now, let me finish. They used primarily the old lines from going to the Seco utility system. It is true what you said, that they ran a new main up the old Cherry Hill Road, which was their easiest and shortest access, to get up to the WL door and the 2 schools. That's your 6 miles of line. That only goes across up the old Cherry Hill Road. Now, the question that I asked, could I be able to tie into that main? Absolutely I could. If I got permission from the property owners on Cherry Hill Road to run across their property over to up to my property. That would all be at my cost, right? If the residents who were left out of this plan wish to have a water availability to them, they would have to express interest to Artesian, and it would be on those residents' cost to put the main in, not the county, which the county paid for these mains.
The county is out of the water business. We do not
Who
provide
paid?
water to anyone, and we do not want to be in the water business.
I didn't say you wanted to be in the water.
Right,
Who
so-
paid Artesian for the mains?
We didn't. The county did not provide any
So
funding.
Artesian did pay for that.
Absolutely. They were paid, they provided the funding for that. I'm sure that I'm sure that W.O. Gore provided some of the funding. I am sure that the schools may have provided some funding. Those people that wanted to be connected paid for it, but the county didn't provide one penny.
But the point of the matter is, it was expressed to the people in Cherry Hill that there was water availability to the residents in Cherry Hill area, and that is not a true statement.
Okay, well, Mr. D'Annunzio heard what you said, and I'm sure he'll take that back and they'll clarify it the next time that there's a notice sent out.
Okay.
Now,
John,
let me-
how much was the main?
Pardon?
How much was the cost of the main?
I don't know how much the cost of the main is. For those people, as few residents that it applies to that can tie in, they will be able to tie in up until this year for a cost of $2,000 apiece. If they chose not to tie in this year and they felt the need that they needed to later on, it would be $6,000 to tie into the main. And that does not include the cost that you were charging to come under the road, and it obviously does not include the cost of that only puts the pit in front of the property, so that they have to pay a plumber to tie the pit to their house.
If you live near Alpin, you would pay $10,000. So the $2,000 is a real bargain. If you're in Happy Grace, it's $12,000. The $2,000 is a bargain. And that $12,000 and $10,000 does not include any of the construction cost either.
You're getting off, it's not a matter of it's a bargain or it's a lot. It said the water was going to go up, would be included to the people who lived in that area, and that is not a true statement.
Okay, I'm sure that Mr. D'Annunzio heard that. Now, I'd like to answer your question regarding the internal auditor. And I am emphatically against hiring an internal auditor at this time. As I've said before, I reserve the right to change my mind at any time when I believe that the county executive or her staff is not cooperative with providing documentation and information to the council, that if there's ever any misleading or inaccurate information provided to the council, if there's any perception of wrongdoing financially by anyone within the executive branch as far as spending money, I will seriously consider changing my mind. But similar to Council Member McCarthy, is that we had a directive from the voters of Cecil County to keep our taxes low, to not grow government, to keep the amount of government growth to a very bare minimum, and I'm going to try to stick to that unless I see any bad information or wrongdoing on the executive side of the government.
Councilman Hodge, with all due respect, I think you're picking and choosing your directives. I kind of lost confidence in this more when she switched her party affiliation, and now she has a majority on the legislative committee. I thought the way that this charter was supposed to work was checks and balances. You're basically acquiescing the authority over to Ms. Moore. So that's the way I see it.
I would have to agree with that. If it hadn't been for the two issues that I cited, I would feel that there might not be a need. If I could put trust in my elected officials, I would feel that there would not be a need. But so far you exhibit that's not the case.
How do you like his new seat? The next speaker is Dave Fordyce.
Councilman. Two topics. I wasn't going to bring the one up, but since the charter seems to be a favorite topic this evening, the changes that I would like to see in the charter that I discussed a month ago, I went ahead and created a Facebook site which people can go to, and the purpose of the site is so people can discuss those changes and perhaps other changes. I do believe a dialogue is needed, and I'm trying to provide a mechanism through which that dialogue can happen.
Could you tell me what the Facebook page is?
Cecil County Citizens for Charter Change. Let me just also comment, since the charter is new, if it's going to operate, I think there's changes that are needed, but I also think that the council is in a position to try and build trust in the charter and that system of government. So, you know, that's a responsibility you guys have. Second topic concerns the cable issue that came up last time. It came up after I spoke. I didn't know that the contract was up for renewal. Where I live in downtown Elkton, I have Comcast. I don't have FiOS. I can't get satellite television. I have neighbors' trees that won't, you know, they won't be cut down till they fall down. My concern is that it's becoming on the high side of affordable, meaning it's becoming unaffordable. So my recommendation to you guys is to consider doing something along the lines of a public meeting, public service commission, like you do with utility rates, where the rates that cable companies charge can be reviewed and discussed. 10 years is a long time to let a contract. And what I heard the last time was that they wanted to make it even longer. So I would urge you guys to consider doing something along those lines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bernie Robinson?
Good evening, members of the council. I'm here today to talk about the application for the sewage sludge to be spread on a farm near Blair Shore, which is actually also in the Locust Point area. When I first heard about this, I didn't know anything at all about sewage sludge. I started looking it up on the internet, and the more that I looked at, the more horrified I became. This is not fertilizer. It is being touted as fertilizer, but it's not. It is full of toxic waste, industrial waste, medical waste. It has every conceivable chemical that you can imagine inside of it. And I'm worried about it polluting our neighborhood. I'm worried about our wells. This farm has the high ground to the entire neighborhood. During heavy rain, the runoff from this farm rushes down the road like a river. Everybody's downhill. We all know what rolls downhill. I, for one, and for many of my neighbors who I've spoken with, we don't want this to happen in our neighborhood. The more I've looked up what's in it, and you can look on some of the websites, but if you look at sludgefacts.org and reference document 111, there's a list. It's not even a whole list, but it's a partial list. There's 56 heavy metals. They only regulate 9. There's every possible thing from hospitals and other things, mortuaries, slaughterhouses, all of the bacteria and the pathogens that are in that, they only regulate fecal coliform. There's synthetic chemicals in there. There's pharmaceuticals, hydrocarbons, petrochemicals, organ chlorines, steroids, hormones, everything that you can imagine. And not just the way that those chemicals and everything would interact on their own, but put them all into one toxic soup and then spread it out on the farmland. This may be the cheapest method of getting rid of sewage sludge, but it's not safe. And everything that I've looked at on the internet just reaffirms that. There are other websites that you can go to, sewagesludgeactionnetwork.com. I might have already mentioned sludgefacts.org. And there's sludgevictims.com. If you go to sludgevictims.com, there's a woman there who has compiled a 300-page document from around the country of people that have been harmed by sludge. It's called Sludge Victims for a good reason. A lot of the people that are there, anywhere near where sludge gets spread, end up with all kinds of diseases. People have died. There's a boy up in, I believe it was Pennsylvania, 11-year-old Tony Bume rode his dirt bike through freshly applied sewage sludge on his strip mine site in Rush Township, Pennsylvania. He returned home covered head to toe with black putrid smelling material. His mother had him remove the clothes in the garage and bathe immediately. She hosed off his bike to remove the sludge. 2 days later, Tony had a lesion on his arm and leg, a sore throat, fever, vomiting, and a headache. 6 days later, he was in a hospital emergency room, his fever climbing. The child was then rushed by helicopter to Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh, where he died the next morning from a virulent Staphylococcus aureus infection, 8 days after he rode his bike through the sludge. I don't want to see any children in my neighborhood have that happen to them.
Bernie, thank you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate the research that you've been doing. Some of the other things that are shocking is that the runoff, you're right next to Elk Creek.
The Elk River.
The Elk River. And for MDE to be mandating all these mandates on us, and then how could they allow this kind of runoff? It's just beyond me. The Synagro company that you had found had most of the contracts to remove or to get rid of this sludge. They're actually the company that is handling this contract application.
Yes, they have applied for the permits.
And the executive of this company was linked to something, was it in Ohio?
I believe it was in Detroit. There were some bribery scandals up in Detroit where Synagro was trying to get a contract to haul the sludge from Detroit, and apparently there were some some misdoings with the people that worked for that company, which resulted in some bribery charges. They are one of the largest haulers in the country. They would be the company that wants to do the hauling here. If you look up a lot of the things that are on the internet, you can find so much information, and it's not just the families and the wells in our neighborhood. When that stuff hits the Elk River, that farm sits where on the backside of the farm it drops right off to Perch Creek. So whatever runs off down that hill is going into Perch Creek, it's going right into the Elk River. Whatever runs down Locust Point Road downhill is going straight across people's properties right into the river. Whatever runs down Old Locust Point Road in the other direction is going right across people's property into the river. But it doesn't stop there. When you start polluting the river, then it's everybody on the river.
So, and the application also included a statement saying that you would have to disclose if you sold your property within 3 years of spreading the sludge. You would have to disclose that to the people that you were selling it to.
Right. If you were to decide to sell that farm, up to 38 months later, you would still have to disclose what you had done to the new buyer. And, in the applications themselves, some of the things that are regulated or whatever, public access to any site where sewage sludge has been land applied will be controlled for a minimum of 12 months following the land application. So that's to say for a year after it's been applied, you can't walk across that property. Well, what happens to my property when that rainwater runs across my property from that farm? Now I can't walk out my property? It also states that crops which may be eaten raw by humans will not be grown for a period of 3 years following the land application of sewage sludge. So does that say that I can't have a vegetable garden now when that water from that farm rolls down across my property? We're all downhill. They have the high ground in this entire community. And it's not just our community down in Locust Point, it's the community down in Blair Shore, and it's the communities back in Deer Haven, because they want to spread sludge from along Locust Point Road, along Blair Shore Road, all the way over to McEwen Road, or I'm sorry, Elk Forest Road. And it's a total of 338 acres that they want to put this stuff on. And they want to truck it in from like 30 different places. Some of them as far away as Philadelphia, where you have all those refineries and stuff. Are we going to take the sewage sludge from there? You know, the idea of a wastewater treatment plant back in the day was to clean up the water so it could be reintroduced back into the sources. It wasn't to make fertilizer. It's never been to make fertilizer. They want to get rid of the sludge because a long time ago they decided, the federal government decided, you can't dump it in the ocean anymore because it created dead zones and everything around there died. And so they said, well, look, oh my gosh, we're ruining the coral reefs, and we're killing off all of the fish. And so we're not going to do that anymore. And when they did that, they classified sewage sludge as a pollutant. But right around that time, they decided, hey, well, we have to come up with a better name for this, and we'll call it biosolids. And, we'll give it to the farmers for free. Well, if they're going to truck it from Philadelphia all the way down to Elkton, and they're not going to charge you any money, that doesn't sound right. Why would they do that? They're looking to get rid of it somewhere, anywhere, and they don't care. And I say not in our town. I say not in our county. I say not in our state.
Mr. Robinson, I heard every word you said. I have to tell you that, first of all, this application is a long permit process that is totally and absolutely regulated by the Maryland Department of Environment. The county commissioners, the county council, the county executive has no say whatsoever, any more than you do, on whether or not this permit is issued. This is not new. This has happened before. The public and the property owners that live in the area have more say than we do. And I would suggest that you participate in the permit process as it unfolds. Now, I will fully support allowing, if we have any say over the process, and having public venues where the public will participate. It is not our party. We are not hosting a meeting. This is something that the Department of Environment asked us if we wanted to have a public informational meeting, and we said absolutely. So we've done what the law says. Now I have to tell you, in the past, previous boards of commissioners, previous state delegates have tried to implement zoning requirements and conditions and criteria to try to zone out and prevent land application of sludge. And they've been rebuked by the legislators in Annapolis. And quite frankly, I would encourage you to have them try again to try to pass a law. If you feel so strongly that this is what we need to do to prevent land application of wastewater sludge, then you need to try to get a law passed that it's illegal and can't happen and won't happen. We don't have that authority here in Cecil County to do that.
President Hodge, he actually, there was other information that you had discovered, and I think it sounds very close to what we stumbled upon with Clean Chesapeake Coalition. Carroll County has, it was Attorney Kelly has used the process of coordination, that there's a law the federal government implemented that said if there's any mandate being enforced from the federal government or the state government that doesn't allow local governments to provide input, they have to go back to the drawing board and incorporate them into the process. Do you have that? The language that he was just reading me today, this afternoon, sounds very much like the coordination process.
Well, it says that in the regulations that are 40 CFR Part 503, the standards in use and disposal of sewage sludge, And 40 CFR 501.1 and 503.5 and 503.6. Hold on for just 1 second while I see where I'm at. Finally, it's worth noting that any state statute or regulation that purports to remove the power of local governments within this context bring the state law in direct conflict with the federal law and the supremacy clause of the Constitution. So, if you were to look those up and to read that, you might find that you do have some power. And if you want to say that you don't have any power or whatever, and you're saying that I should get involved, I am involved, and I would like to try and pass laws. There are attempts all across the country to pass laws to ban this extremely dangerous practice. What I would ask from you is for you to get involved as well. That's why I'm here tonight, to ask you as my county council to get involved in this.
I know that the county commissioners passed a law creating criteria to prevent fly ash disposal in Cecil County. And that property owner sued us and they won, because the state said that we could not place criteria on what the state permits. And if the state said that the permit said that they could put land application of fly ash, then that's what the state said. And so at the end of the day, I know that we've had efforts, Al, in the past about sludge. And I know that several of our state delegates offered to go to Annapolis. And I can't tell you what happened, but they weren't successful.
Well, 40 CFR 5011, State Sludge Management Program Regulations, and this is a federal law, states that nothing in this part precludes a state or a political subdivision thereof or an interstate agency from adopting or enforcing requirements established by state or local law that are more stringent or more extensive than those required in this part or in any other federal statute or regulation, which seems to say to me that you are allowed to put more restrictions on than what the federal guidelines are, and you're allowed to put more restrictions than what the state guidelines are. And the state as well can put more guidelines than what the federal guidelines are. But the state can't prohibit local governments from enforcing more stringent restrictions. So I may be misconceived, and you may know more about the law than I do, so I would ask that you look into that.
This is not the first permit application in Cecil County. There's been many others. And I think the best strategy is to try to convince the property owner that this is not a good idea, that he has control of this, and he needs to be informed of your research. He needs to know that if you truly believe that this sludge is pollutant, that he needs to know that it will reduce the value of his property and that it will cause a lot of harm to you and the neighbors. Excuse me. So I would encourage you to communicate in a responsible, civil way with the property owner to try to convince them to withdraw the property from consideration.
Mr. Robeson, does the person who applied for the permit, do they live there?
Not sure, because some of them have addresses that are different than the local addresses of the farms, so I'm not sure exactly who lives there and who does not.
I don't think it matters whether they live there or not. If they
Well,
if they own the property,
poisoned and you don't live there, it makes a difference, because if you don't live there, it's not your well, and it's not.
If I owned property anywhere in the world, I would not want it to be polluted. I would not want the property of my, I would not want the value of my property diminished by some pollutant. And so I don't care if I live there or not live there. I don't want my properties to be used for a dumping site.
I just wanted to point out too, with the coordination, Attorney Kelly had said that it was, he's found in his introduction of this process into the remedy that for the most part they act like they don't know what he's talking about, but when he goes through the steps of scheduling the meeting, they always show up. So we're being educated. think there's 7 counties that belong to the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, and I believe this is an instance that we could use that. So keep up the good fight, Ms. Ferguson. I think you're doing a great job.
And thank you for that, and I would ask once again that this council use all of its power and whatever influence that it may have to not only prevent this from happening in a site where they have the high ground in the entire neighborhood and all of the neighborhoods around there are at risk, but it's our bay as well. And so I will continue to do what I can, but I would ask you to get involved as well. Please go to those websites and educate yourselves. I had no idea what this stuff was when I first started out, and I'm horrified today. Thank you.
I will suggest that we discuss it amongst ourselves and consider getting a legal opinion from our legal counsel on whether or not we can set higher standards than the state would consider for land application of sludge. And I'm not an attorney, so I can't respond to the language that you recited, but I do know that there's been attempts in the past by local governments to try to set criteria to restrict land application of sludge in their communities, and they've all been turned away somehow, some way, and we'll do the research and figure out whether or not we can do that.
The attorney that we are using for Clean Chesapeake Coalition and also for the cable franchise, they handled the contract on that. They're being educated in this coordination process. They had a representative there at that meeting where Mr. Kelly spoke. So they see that being as a very credible potential for the state of Maryland.
Mr. Hodge, I'm also not an attorney, and the language that I was reading to you came from a website, NidelLaw.com, and they are environmental lawyers. I got this information off of their website, so I just wanted to at least let you know where I got the information from. Thank you for your time.
I think we have time for just one more question. Joe Carabetta.
I'll be real quick. Follow up to something that I guess predated the council, the issue with the guardrails visibility. Are we getting feedback on that yet?
No, Joe, we sent a letter to the State Highway Administration bringing your concern up with site distance, particularly at Jackson Station Road, and that letter went out, I think, last week. As far as I know, there's been no follow-up or response yet.
Okay, thank you. One other thing, what is each of yours understanding? I read the article, I was unable to attend the budget hearing meeting, but it said that tax rates were going to be held the same. Are we talking constant yield, or are we talking the tax rate? What is each of yours understanding?
What I heard, Joe, coming from the county executive, is her goal is to try to keep the tax rate the same, and not disregarding the constant yield. That she can't guarantee or promise anything because she hadn't even seen any of the requested budgets from any of the departments at that time. Subsequently, the budgets have come in from all the departments, with the exception of the school, and so I think that she's going to give it her best effort to hold the rate, even though we believe the constant yield rate will be higher because assessments have gone down.
Yeah, well, I just needed a clarification on that, because
Okay,
as you know, a constant yield rate, if we maintain constant yield rate, in some people, that's a tax increase.
That's not what she said.
I know, but that's what I'm trying to get clarification on.
And I'm not speaking, if Al wants to say something different.
Yeah, you're correct. The initial development of the budget is based on the current tax rate, which is 99.9901, I think. The constant yield, we'll get that information in a week or so. As President Hodge indicated, that most likely is going to be over $1. So the rate would increase if we went to the constant yield rate, most likely. But in the initial planning of the budget, we're using the existing rate.
And then one last thing, I also noticed in the paper that the school population is down down 262 children that we're educating. I would think we want to take a sharp scissors and sharp look with eyeglasses on in their budget. I would say that needs to be cut. I understand that they have some pre-negotiated contracts, but we need to cut them back. If you're buying less of a product, the price should be less, and we're getting less of a product.
Joe, I'm happy you brought that up. One of the things that I had learned with the in-house auditor, they could also go and get more information on those budgets because of the charter form of government. We have access to more of their budget than we did before, as well as the sheriff's department. So there might be more opportunity to look for cuts there.
Yeah, and especially with their fund balances and everything. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, this concludes Citizens Corner. Thank you for coming and stay for our legislative meeting.
February 5th, 2013.